Everybody says to just start. If only it was just that easy. We all have our lives that we're living every single day. Jobs, exercising, daydreaming about starting that one thing, sleeping, jobs, sleep, jobs. It just isn't as easy as it sounds when people tell you to just start. That's just the way it is.
But you should still just start. It is something that I've just done. And I've said the word just 9 times. Just after this one. That's it, I promise.
But within the past month, I finally started something that's pretty important to me. Creating.
As of yesterday, I've completely finished my first video. Before I was working as a video editor, so still in the creative field, but I've always wanted to have complete creative control and create videos for myself, and it kind of always felt like I was kicking the can down the road.
Like, I'm sure a lot of people can agree with me that the time really just never seems right to begin something new. And for a while, I fell into this trap, just thinking of how one day I'll finally commit to creating something cool after writing down all of my ideas and just trying to envision it all come together. The truth is, nothing will ever happen if you don't start. So, that's exactly what I did.
So yeah, I finished my first video. Something that has been difficult for me starting something entirely new is accepting the fact that it won't be perfect, or it won't even be the best that I know it can be. There were a handful of mistakes that I made that I knew better, and I knew how to avoid them, but for whatever reason I just forgot. Instead of going back and re-recording the parts that I messed up on to make it perfect, I faced the feeling of, wow, this isn't as good as I know I can get it. I wish I could do the whole thing over. Head on. Instead, I actually ended up taking notes throughout the entire creation process of what I want to focus on more for the next one. So here's some things I learned throughout finishing my first video completely, and at the end I'm going to be coming back to the idea of why I think starting is important, but debatably even more important is finishing, specifically when you're trying to reach your creative goals. And I actually think it's fitting to go over everything I learned while actually setting up for my next video. First thing that I want to talk about is the types of shots I get. I'm a big fan of trying to get as many visuals as possible, but at a point, the basic visuals of just showing what you're talking about isn't always enough. I actually think some of the best looking shots ever are macro shots. That's when you get so incredibly close that you see details that you wouldn't normally see just with the human eye. With that being said, that brings me to my first note. I love detail shots, and I wish I got more of them. And when I was editing through the clips, I noticed the ones that I thought were the best were the close-up details. So I'm actually going to show you the detail shots that I did get that I did end up really liking, and then also some shots that I wish I got details of. But this is what I mean, right? There's a little bit of foreground in the hand, then it's the clear in-focus subject of the SD card. You can still see that there is a camera that it came out of, especially with the movement of it kind of coming into the focus. I, again, just think it's a very clean, minimal kind of shot, and I just like that style. Okay, this is one that I actually wish I got a detail of. I had everything laid out here as a top-down view. What I wish I did is after I recorded this is take the camera, bring it down to have kind of like a bottom side view, and then just do like a camera pan left to right, and it would get the details of everything at the bottom and kind of show all the products just from a different angle that, again, you don't normally see it at. This was probably my favorite. You know exactly what to look at. You can still see what's going on in the background. It's me clicking the mouse. And again, it's that angle that you don't normally look at things at. See, if I put this here, see, right? Like, this just looks more interesting because you don't usually see something this close up. If I kind of held it back here, like, it's whatever. Although, of course, it's always important to get a wide coverage of shots, because if every shot you use is a detail shot, it's kind of going to lose its novelty pretty quickly. I think probably about 99% of creators find cameras a lot more exciting than lights. I mean, I do, at least. The camera I use is a Sony FX3. It's a high-end camera, but for lights, I went a little more quote-unquote budget with a company called Newer. Actually, as far as my needs, these lights are plenty. No matter what, you're still gonna have to do some level of color correction or color grading in editing. Talking about editing, I was actually embarrassed to find out that I have this fantastic camera and I can't get the best image out of it. Not because I don't know how to use the camera, but because I didn't properly use lighting. Now, this is kind of the interesting part. I actually do know about the fundamentals of lighting, and in fact, for most of the video, I implemented them totally fine. But what I actually think my biggest issue was, I felt like I had to do too much with it, to the point where you can look at it and be like, oh, that guy has lighting equipment because you can tell that it's lit. I thought it looked like there's more production quality behind it, but in fact, it just did the opposite and made it look amateur. There's even a few shots that for whatever reason, I decided to crank the color temperature of the fill light. And like I said, it wasn't just the color temperature, it was also the brightness to the point where it just looked incredibly unnatural. The worst part about all this is I knew this. I had all this information. I acknowledged all this information, and I actually completely understood that doing the things that I did would have resulted in a worse image. Yeah, I did it anyways. My motto going forward with lighting is realistic lighting is better than perfect lighting. And another incredibly important thing about the lighting is I want to make sure that it looks good in camera. I kind of believe in the idea of you should make the camera do the work, not yourself in the edit. That actually brings me to my next set of points, which is about the recording process. And although the time actually being spent in front of a camera is a very small percentage of the amount of time spent on a project, it's almost debatably the most important part. Because when you think about it, whatever is recorded is whatever can be used. For me, the editing process is enhancing the footage that you already recorded. Because in the edit, you can't create better footage. Like if I was talking up here and my head gets cut off, I can't exactly crop that in the edit. So I guess all of these next notes of mine are not just how to record better, but also how to record better alone. Having an extra person would always be helpful, but I'm always going to be recording alone because I have no friends. And speaking of recording alone, the last one on this list is something that I did account for, and I realized that I want to do so much more of that because of the difference it actually made in the video. So right now I'm actually setting up for A-roll, which is the same thing as talking head. When I have all the lights set up and it's just me and the camera, it's awkward. I have everything set up and it's this big preparation and I make it look good, and then suddenly it's all up to me to actually sound good. So that is something that I noticed and something that I want to get better at, but it's not exactly something that you could just fix. My idea that I had is instead of having a camera farther back, more zoomed in, I'd have the camera closer in a more wide angle lens. It kind of just feels more natural. I kind of make it a point in my videos to have a conversational tone. But something else that I do want to start to do in my videos that I really think would make things easier, specifically in the post-production editing section, is set my white balance based on each lighting scenario. I think I started recording this like 45 minutes ago. I've been moving stuff around. The sun changes outside. When I was on my stairs bringing all the lights up, there's different lighting and it all just affects the colors differently. I mean, the camera I use does have log footage, which I do use, and pretty much in simplest terms, it allows you to push the image a lot farther than some of the other recording formats would be able to, which means it's actually not a problem to fix it in post, and it actually works completely fine. But getting it right in camera means the image will be much more consistent throughout the entire video. Now, the next note still has to do with recording, and I did try it, but it actually really comes in the preparation, which I did not do. But going forward, this is something that I'm 100% implementing, and that is recording all of the B-roll together. And usually for the B-roll, I have different lighting setups. Sometimes it's right here on this couch, sometimes it's over there on my desk. So in order to make it run as efficiently as possible, I actually like to group each shot from the shot list to a different color when I'm planning it in Notion. I record the B-roll out of order, and then I put it together in the correct order in the edit. So it's pretty much just a way to batch your tasks together. And again, that really helps things run efficiently, because that way you kind of just have your lights, you set it up once, you record everything you need to, and you don't have to take them down and set them up over here and then take them down and set them up back over there. And another little lighting tip, practical lights make a huge difference. There's also a nice little painting there. So this is actually what I do. It's simple. I turn it on just like that. Adds a splash of light, and when I'm sitting on my couch here for like a basic A-roll setup, it creates a nice little pocket of light right behind my head, and I think that actually makes it look much more interesting. And actually right here, I'm setting up a backlight that would hit kind of the back of my head if I was sitting there. All I have to do is match the color temperature to about that kind of orange warm color, and it works. And I do realize I should be using sandbags on this, but this light, these little panel lights are not heavy at all, so it feels safe. If I was doing anything for a client, I would use sandbags just to make sure nothing falls on them. I don't really want to get sued. Now, this is my favorite one that I did do, and I realized how effective it really is, specifically when you're recording alone, and that is to shoot a little bit wider. And then what you can do is in post, keyframe a left to right movement or up and down or some kind of camera movement that you can really not get any other way. Okay, well that's actually a lie. You can get it if you have someone else to move the camera, but like I said, this is for when you record alone, like me. But what you can really do is get an electric slider. Expensive. You also have to set it up every time and go on the app and adjust it. And again, just like the macro close-up shots, it adds a lot of visual stimulation without just throwing a bunch of random things on screen at once. And I ended up really liking this kind of left to right simple pan movement. I do have one shot that I specifically wrote in to do this left to right movement. I'm gonna use it as one of the outro clips. There's no movement, and I purposely recorded it a little bit wider than I wanted it to. And in, I think, almost every software, you can actually make presets for keyframes and movements. You add a keyframe for position and scale. At the start of the clip, you go maybe 115%, maybe even 110. You move the x-axis to the farthest left you want, and then you go to the last frame. All you do is just move it to the right. And when you play it back, I'm gonna play it back in 2x speed. Just a simple movement. It's slow, it's subtle, and I like it. Of course, you can zoom in more so you have more movement from left to right, which I might end up doing for this clip since it's a little bit longer. But as you can see, as I'm panning over it, it just adds a touch of movement. I think for longer clips specifically, it's really nice to have two movements, the camera movement and then the action. Then what you could do is go to Save Effects Preset. I'll save it to mine and I'll do left to right pan. So if I reset it again, there's no movement. All I have to do is drag this left to right pan onto it. And now it's done. Obviously, sometimes you might have to go in and adjust it. And when you're saving the preset, make sure to click stretch to fit. That way, no matter the length of your clip, like this one is starting here and ending here, it will stretch the keyframes to fit the clip. Like I said, the slider, if you have the money, is the way to go. I think they're about $300 to $500 though. So for making YouTube videos, for me right now, I'm gonna stick with this budget method. And this might kind of just be part of my style that I like it. It's kind of minimal, it's simple, it's clean, but it adds that extra layer of depth to the video that I really like. And I also got batteries to put in here so I don't have to run a cable up. They were the cheapest ones on Amazon with good reviews. So we'll see if it starts a fire. I hope not. That's looking good. Going up. Now it's time to set up the key light. You might think this light stand looks very light for this big dome, and I think you're correct. Again, if I was shooting this for a client, I would definitely upgrade this little guy. But if it falls on me, you know, I don't really care. I also have to keep in mind to not ruin shots. And I know that might sound obvious, but there's a few mistakes that I made that I didn't notice until I was actually editing. Because again, it was my first time, and again, I was alone. But that doesn't give me the pass from knowing how important it is to actually check your camera settings, the simple ones, before you click record. And of course, I knew that, but I mean, I guess I just kind of lost focus. Literally, I lost focus and I forgot what I set my camera's focus to, and it ruined the shot. So again, I think I need to start focusing more on the little things that really make or break your shot, the basics. If the lighting isn't perfect, like whatever, you can fix it a little bit in the editing and it could still look great. If you're not focused on the right thing, your shot is ruined. Like I said, you can't create a better recording in the edit. And to be fair, there's a lot of repositioning shots. There's a lot of moving the camera around and manual focus to autofocus and back and forth. Again, it's kind of a lot when you're alone, but that still doesn't make it okay to not check your focus. So that's definitely something I'm gonna double check going forward. Oh, I didn't actually plug it in. That's so embarrassing. I'll add that to my list for my third video. Make sure it's plugged in. There we go. And it's also important to check your background. Like I just set up that C-stand with that overhead light. There was a shot which was just B-roll. Thankfully that I had it in the background, not fully set up yet. And like, yeah, I get it. The camera's monitor is small, but I can't be missing that. That's a pretty big obstruction. In a lot of cases, that could be incredibly distracting. And again, one of the biggest things that I can recommend people if they're recording alone is if you're not sure if you're in frame, if you can't exactly see your camera screen, check your recording in camera. I did this both ways. I ended up checking it when I did cut my head off. I'm like, oh, gotta re-record that. It worked. And there's other times where I'm like, I'm sure I'm in there. This is just, you know, tedious, but 10 to 30 seconds of watching it over can save you from having a shot or not having a shot.
Although it's true that starting is incredibly important, I think the only way that I learned about everything in this video was not by starting. It was by finishing. Finishing gives you something tangible to improve from. I think perfection isn't when you have nothing left to add. I think it's when you have nothing left to remove. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you haven't started already, start. And if you haven't finished something, finish. Even when you know something is missing, because now you know exactly what you would do next time. There's no point of trying to achieve perfection, even if you think you have in the moment. Sooner or later, you'll learn something else that you wish you could have done. And I think the most important thing that I learned is that there's always something more to learn.
Like I said, my goal for this channel is to document the creative lifestyle, which includes the good things, the bad things, the mistakes. So if you have anything to add, feel free to leave a comment. And if you are interested in sticking around for my journey and being a part of it, feel free to subscribe.